What is up, everybody? Welcome back to the Crew 2, and in this video I'm going to take a look at the Lancia Stratos HF GR4. This is going to basically be the Rallycross version of the regular Stradale, and to be honest, I have to admit this car looks 100 times better than that one does. I would probably say most people are most likely going to agree, but when jumping into this thing, you can also do a few things like the rims and or the caliper colors, but I would say most players are probably going to leave this thing basically stock like I am. My goodness, guys, this car looks so dang good like this. I kind of wish you could get the other one to look similar to it, but then again, I do know Lancia is heavily into like the Rallycross era and or into Rallycross in general. So, and this is going to be one of the most beautiful Rallycross vehicles ever. I just love the overall design and or character of this vehicle. I really do love the way they actually designed some of these cars back in the day, but I also do want to know your thoughts, by the way, guys. Which rally car is going to be your favorite and why? I really do feel like there is a lot of them out there, but the overall look of this vehicle is definitely pretty awesome. So the first thing I noticed is that rear tire on this car is absolutely huge. I don't know tire sizes very well, but if I had to guess, it's most likely going to be insanely similar to like a Lamborghini's tire. It's kind of insane how big that tire is. Plus, you have these huge mud flaps. Can you guys imagine these cars not having mud flaps and then driving these around on the roads? Every single car would have broken windshields forever, so basically every single car behind you would most likely have broken windshields. So I guess it does make sense how these cars do have that, and also why many states and stuff also do actually regulate the mud flaps on their vehicles. But overall though, guys, I do think a lot of people are really going to love the way this car looks. Now let's go do an outside look of this vehicle right now, and also take this thing on a quick top speed test. So when spawning outside at this Lancia, guys, I did notice my character is once again inside of the seat. I also noticed this with the street version of this car as well. That's not really that big of a deal, but the entire car really is going to look insanely well. Most players are probably not going to be looking in the interior, and most players, I would say, are probably not going to be looking in this interior, especially when driving straight down the road. That would make absolutely no sense. And one thing I've always wondered is I do think a lot of these cars actually had more lights on them. I do remember back in the day, like Dirt 2 and or like Dirt 3, there was a lot of events obviously at nighttime, so having as many lights as possible is most likely going to be insanely helpful, especially if some of them do break. But overall though, guys, not only does this Lancia look insane in this light, it also sounds awesome. So the interior view of this Stratos is going to be different than the street variant. That's most likely going to be due to the fact that it's, a race car, but I'm actually really liking the way this car does look a lot more than the street variant, and that's most likely going to be because it's kind of stripped, but it also does have that race car feeling. Now let's see what the Lancia can actually hit for 8. No. Now let's go do a top speed test on this Lancia to really see what it can get to. To be honest, I'm most likely expecting this car to do around 180 and or a little bit more past that, because most of the Rallycross vehicles, I was noticing many of them do like 180 to around 190 for like the oddball cars, but with a Nitro Chemist set, guys, this Lancia can hit. Let's see. Don't hit anything. 186 miles an hour is going to be maxed out, so the car wasn't pushing past that. I would probably say it's almost going to be in the middle, but most of the cars do tend to have a very similar top speed. So the Lancia Stratos is actually becoming one of my favorite rallycross cars in the Crew 2, which I would say is probably going to sound slightly insane because my favorite car before was indeed the Ford Fiesta. Now, I'm not saying it's going to be like the best rallycross car, but my goodness, guys, this thing is so much fun to use. I love the way this car does feel going around corners and or the overall stability. Sure, sometimes it does feel slightly twitchy, but it's really nothing bad at all, at least compared to some of the other cars I have been testing out recently. But the Stratos is actually going to be an insanely fun car to use basically all the way around. It's also going to be one of the only 5 speeds I actually like a lot, and funnily enough, one of my favorite cars in the Rally Raid class is the GTO the Judge. That's also going to be a 4-speed, so I guess it really is going to be fun messing around with some of these oddball vehicles. Now, one thing I did notice about the Stratos is on some of these straightaways I was hitting 190, which I did mention many of the Rallycross cars basically have the exact same top speed, and I would probably say the Lancia is most likely going to be in the exact same category. Now, how is this car going to do on some of these smaller tracks and or some of the bigger events? In some ways, I was kind of surprised because some vehicles do shine in certain places, and then you can see some of their flaws in some other ones as well. But like jumping into that small track in Dallas, I was noticing how nicely this car actually felt going around that track. Then I decided to do the Temecula wineries with this vehicle as well, and my goodness guys, I felt right at home with this car, going around every corner with confidence. I was also pushing it pretty hard as well, and it seemed to do insanely well. And of course it is going to be a 5-speed, so sometimes you can kind of wonder how these cars actually might do. I was actually really surprised because it was a lot better than I thought it was going to be. For one, if you guys do go around certain corners, you may have to downshift into 4th, and then you can basically go right back into 5th and then hit your nitrous, and this car is going to get up to speed insanely quickly. I would say one of the only small flaws with the Stratos is probably going to be in the beginning of the race. It does seem kind of slow once it goes from 1st to 2nd gear, but after that I would say the car is basically going to be a rocket ship. And of course, when you are going insanely fast, you also need some decent brakes to actually make the car stop a bit faster. I was noticing with this Stratos that yes, you actually stop pretty dang fast as well, and surprisingly you can actually fly out of these corners with pretty dang insane speed, even though sometimes you might have to downshift to like 1 gear, which is honestly not going to be a big deal, at least compared to some of the other cars. I really was noticing one thing about the Stratos, guys, and that's the fact of many of the other Lancias in this game are honestly not going to be the funnest thing to drive. I'm not really the biggest fan of many of the Rallycross cars in general. I would probably say that's why many players most likely use the Escalade and or the Mitsubishi WRC05 because those cars are so dang stable and they're also going to be insanely quick, so it's hard to pick other cars. That was actually why I was using the Ford Fiesta. Sure, it wasn't the best, but it's also not going to be like the meta, so it is usable. And for me, as long as the car is actually usable, it doesn't have to be like the greatest thing out there, but at least if you can actually run these cars in summits, I really do see that as being like a win because it can mix up the variety and the overall gameplay instead of running like 1 or 2 cars in every summit. I really do recommend trying out this Stratos, but I would like to know your thoughts on this car in the comments below, and don't forget to leave a like and subscribe for more insight.